Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's special lecture. We're so excited to bring you Mr. Philip Bell, Mr. Greg Jacobs of the Coharie Tribe, and Dr. Ryan Emanuel of Duke University to share about an amazing project just to the southeast of the Triangle. And I've been in conversation with Mr. Greg about this for quite a while, so I'm really honored to be able to have them with us tonight on the Zoom to share about this amazing project. I'm Joanna Massey-Lalikas. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement at the North Carolina Botanical Garden. And I'm joined this evening by David Michaud, who is in the Zoom to support moderation of Q&A from the audience throughout the talk, actually. And we're excited to have folks tuning in from across North Carolina, in addition to viewers in California, Florida, New York, and South Carolina. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Today's talk is offered in partnership with the UNC American Indian Center, and we're just so grateful for this partnership on this talk, as well as other initiatives and talks. We're in partnership together in developing an American Indian cultural garden on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill. It's been an amazing experience working together on that project. AIC has been instrumental in supporting us at the North Carolina Botanical Garden and developing relationships with Native communities across the state and working together with us to build relationships, offer relevant programming and mutual peer exchange. And I'd like to introduce Jessalyn Kazaya with the American Indian Center. She's the Community Engagement Program Officer. And it's been a real honor to work with her and to work with her to bring these folks today with us to talk with you all. I'd like to invite her to share a few words and introduce our speakers tonight.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you to everyone who's joining us tonight. So my name is Jessalyn Kazaya. I am a member of the Lumbee tribe, and I am serving currently as Community Engagement Program Officer at the American Indian Center. We're also so thankful for our partnership with the Botanical Garden and everything that it's blossomed into over the years. So I have the great fortune of introducing you to some of my very favorite people and honestly heroes in community. This is some of the work that I found most inspiring over the years and been fortunate to watch it grow. So I love to hear the story every time. I feel like I'm also always learning new details. And so without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers. We are joined tonight by Mr. Philip Bell. I will call him, as we know him, the Great Coharie River legend. And he always gets a little humble about that, but it's true. Mr. Philip Bell knows everything about the Great Coharie River, and I'll just include. And we were looking at the run of the river as it was represented on the maps, and Mr. Philip chimed in and said, actually, true historic, the real run of the river lays this way, but this is how the land is impacted over time. So we're speaking with people who truly know this land and this river. So Mr. Philip is a Coharie/Lumbee Indian born and raised in the Herring Township of Sampson County. He retired after 34 years from the U.S. Department of Agriculture and served as a regional and national forest pest program manager for 12 years. His current volunteer work with the Coharie Tribe includes overseeing the Great Coharie River Initiative to create a navigable corridor along the upper Great Coharie River to allow community residents an opportunity to enjoy the river. And I won't spoil the details, but they have cleared over 100 miles and probably many more since the last time I heard that statistic updated. So we are also joined tonight with Dr. Ryan Emanuel, who belongs to the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. He's also Associate Professor of Hydrology at Duke University, and he's based in the Nicholas School of the Environment, where he leads a group of scholars who study the movement and status of water in the environment. His group also works to amplify Indigenous perspectives on land and water. Much of that work aims to identify and address barriers to tribal participation in environmental decision-making in North Carolina. Ryan has received awards and fellowships related to his research. And we're also joined tonight by Mr. Greg Jacobs, who is a citizen of the Coharie tribe and serves as the tribal administrator for the Coharie Intertribal Council, headquartered at the historic East Carolina Indian School and present-day Coharie Tribal Center in Clinton, North Carolina. Additionally, he serves as a commissioner on the North Carolina Indian Heritage Commission. Mr. Greg is a graduate of the inaugural North Carolina Native Leadership Institute, which happened in 2013 to 2014. He serves on the board for United Tribes of North Carolina. In 2014, he was recognized and awarded the title of Elder of the Year by the North Carolina Native American Youth Organization, NCNAO. And I'll also say that we had him as Elder in Residence at the American Indian Center just a couple years ago. So we just appreciate all three of you being here with us today and look forward to everything you have to share.
Thank you, Jesselyn, for that kind introduction. And thanks to Joanna and David for the invitation. Honored to be here. Especially grateful to be here with Mr. Greg and Philip.
Yes, Ryan, it's good to be here with you, Joanna, David, Jesselyn. I'm excited about this. It's a great opportunity that we've watched develop down in Sumter County, the Great Coharie River Initiative. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you that are viewing, and we're going to take a ride down that river tonight. So it'll be exciting. It's been quite a ride. A different story is being told today about Native American people. It's a story of integrity and honor and pride. The Great Coharie River, that's who we are, we're river people. And I have seen that river breathe life in all of those that go down it today. The story that I'm telling is a story of beauty and then a story of disappointment in the way that the river has become. There's something special about the water. There was life in the water. We've got a saying around here that the river is always taking care of us, and now it's calling out for help, and we got to take care of it. That canopy that I used to walk under is gone. Those paths that I used to walk down is gone. There's a spirit in that river, the spirit of my ancestors, and it has been awakened in this tribe. So we're revisiting the past to take us into a strong future. That river is our culture. That's who we are. We're river people. And to bring that back into the equation is helping the circle to be completed.
Thank you all for starting us out with that amazing video. I'm going to share my screen here because Greg and Philip have invited me to give some background and broader context before they dive in and tell you all about the Great Coharie River Initiative. Hopefully you all can see my screen okay. I just want to introduce you all to the North Carolina coastal plain through the eyes of indigenous peoples. We're probably all familiar with this map of North Carolina. But I first want to point out the names of the tribal nations that are here. We've got North Carolina tribes shown on the map. Of course, I have the Catawba Nation there in parentheses because even though they're based in South Carolina today, they have a long their ancestral lands extend deep into what's now North Carolina across that arbitrary colonial border. And we have the eastern band of Cherokee far in the western part of the state up in the mountains. But if you look to the east, you'll see the landscape becomes greener and greener. And on this map, that green represents wetlands. And so, of course, the closer you get to the coast, the more prevalent wetlands become, until by the time you get all the way out to those big shallow estuaries, the sounds, Pamlico Sound and Albemarle Sound out on the coast, wetlands make up about 50% of the entire landscape. So these wetlands could be swamps, they could be precosins, marshes, all kinds of watery places. I want to point out that some of the tribes whose names you see on here are the same names as rivers. And we have a long tradition in the eastern part of what is now North Carolina of identifying ourselves with specific waterways. Up in the Northeast, you have the Meherrin. Then further down, of course, the Coharie, the Lumbee people, my tribe, we identify with our ancestral river. Waccamaw-Siouan identify not with a river, but with a lake, Lake Waccamaw, and the Waccamaw River that flows out of it. That lake is an important part of their cultural story as well. But as you move further and further east, as wetlands begin to dominate more and more of the landscape. And of course, there are many other native peoples who are not shown on this map, those tribes that are outside of what's now North Carolina, and even unrecognized native peoples who live in North Carolina today. We have a number of Tuscarora and other folks whose tribes are not recognized at all. But at any rate, we are people of water, and I want to just dig in and give you a very quick tour around and show you coastal freshwater forests, which are just these unique and beautiful wetlands that exist on the fringes of the sounds and estuaries. This is up near where the Roanoke River flows into the sound in northeastern North Carolina. These are shared homelands of our ancestors who were from Algonquian speaking tribes and some Iroquoian speaking tribes. In one of the Algonquian languages, this whole place was called Asamakamuk, the place that we come from. And I think that's beautiful, and it resonates with me. And you see these bald cypress trees rising up out of the water. That's an iconic tree. It exists all across the southeastern wetlands, and it's important to many native peoples, and it's ecologically important as well. And those trees follow us inland. This is around the shore of one of the large lakes in the eastern part of the state, Phelps Lake. You have these very stately looking bald cypress trees with their buttresses rising up out of this crystal clear water fed by rainfall. And then as you move further inland to our present day homelands in around places like Sampson County and Robeson County and other places, we have blackwater streams. These rivers that we identify with culturally, scientists call them blackwater. And you know this if you've ever seen these rivers from afar, the water does indeed look black. If you get up close, it doesn't look black at all. It looks like iced tea. It's a beautiful, rich brown color. That color comes from all the organic matter that is dissolved in the water. Where does that organic matter come from? Well, the headwaters of these streams come from wetlands, deep organic soils, and the water just steeps in those soils, just like tea leaves steeping in a pot of tea. Then that steeped water flows out into the stream. Unlike the rivers that rise in the mountains or the coastal plains, blackwater rivers have their watersheds located entirely within the coastal plain. So they're not picking up clay and silt the way that rivers like the Cape Fear or the Neuse or the Roanoke pick up all of that material and carry it out to the estuary. So these waters are dark, but they are very clear. They tend to have lower dissolved oxygen than more rapid rivers. The water tends to be slightly acidic as well. And those two things in combination, I think are perhaps why we find so many of our ancestral canoes still intact in the water. To some extent, it may be a natural preservative. So the take home to all of this is that we are indeed people of the water. Our names remind us that we're people of the water. So do our cultural practices and our histories, our spirituality, and lots of things about our communities. I like to take people on this quick round robin tour around Coharie and Lumbee territory through these photos. In the top middle, that was the first paddling trip that Philip and I ever took almost a decade ago, when he took me out in the late fall and showed me the Great Coharie River for the very first time, a very memorable experience. And then moving around counterclockwise, this was my first time seeing the 600-plus-year-old dugout canoe that was discovered in the South River in Coharie territory and preserved by the state of North Carolina and then repatriated to the tribe a few years ago. Then moving on down, of course, Greg and Philip are known throughout Indian country and elsewhere for their wonderful hospitality on the river. And this is one of many common scenes of those colorful kayaks floating down the river with used to be Greg and Philip at the head, and now it's the next generation, and they'll tell you all about that. And moving on around, these are some images from Lumbee territory, a mid-20th century baptismal service in the Lumbee River. And that's something that still happens in some places to this day. And so it's a reminder that the river and the waterways are important parts of our spiritual practices as well. And then on the far right-hand side is a sketch of the Lumbee folk hero, Henry Berry Lowry, and his gang. They had a connection to water as well. They were considered outlaws by the state and local authorities. And so they hid out in the swamps along the Lumbee River and its tributaries. And this is one of the artist renderings of their band hiding out in the swamps. And they use that as a home base to launch raids against the corrupt officials and other people that were oppressing Lumbee ancestors and other folks in the region. And so not only was it a home base, but it was also a place that they fell back to in time of need. And for many Lumbee people, the entire river is a memorial to Henry Berry Lowry, because he was never captured, never killed as far as we know, and nobody knows where his remains were laid to rest. And so we think about him oftentimes when we look at the river, much the way that you might look at some kind of memorial or something like this to a hero. And so the river is a memorial to Henry Berry Lowry in that sense. And so this also brings me to a phrase that we use down in Lumbee country, but I don't know how prominent it is in Coharie land. But a lot of folks down home say "on the swamp," and what do they mean? And so the definition of "on the swamp" is really to be in the neighborhood, to be around in the community. And of course, Lumbee communities and Coharie communities aren't in the swamps themselves. We were smarter, our ancestors were smarter than that. They didn't build their homes in the swamps. We lived up on the sandy uplands in between the swamps. And so down low, there's a picture of my father's family home place in Robeson County, one of the outbuildings. And you can see how sandy the soil is there. It's definitely not a swamp, but that's what people refer to back home. when they say on the swamp, they're talking about these kinds of communities that exist among and in between the swamps, like the one you see up above. That is Shoe Hill Creek, and that is adjacent to the site of the Battle of Hayes Pond, which is another important cultural touchstone for Native peoples in North Carolina, Lumbees and other people as well. I want to point out, when I think about on the swamp, Lumbees and Coharies are on the swamp together. Our home communities are not that far apart, 20 to 30 miles apart. So we are close kin, and in some cases, many very close kin. Philip and I are both examples of Lumbee and Coharie peoples. The Emanuels, my Emanuel family came from Sampson County. We came from the Coharie community and left over 100 years ago and moved down and married into the Lumbee community. So when I think about this phrase on the swamp, not only do I think about being around the communities in my home place, but I also think about the closeness that Lumbees and Coharies have shared in my lifetime and in generations past. And you could say the same about many of the other tribal communities in North Carolina, but I think there's an especially close bond between our two tribes. And so our connections to water, unfortunately, have been threatened through history. And one of the early examples of these threats to our watery places was in the late 1800s when lumbermen came down and began to clear cut our swamps. They were looking for cypress. It was a very valuable rot-resistant wood. And so here's an article from Scientific American from the 1880s talking about how to utilize a cypress swamp. Really, the article is about how to exploit a cypress swamp. And it goes into very great detail about how these industrious men from Michigan came down and showed those local people what was what. And they didn't listen to any of the folks who told them to avoid those swamps and leave them alone. They bought 100,000 acres of land in Robeson County alone. And I did the math, and that's about 10% of the entire county these two men bought up. And they came up with a system of using steam shovels to dig canals and float the heavy equipment back into the swamps. And once they dug the canals, they were able to drain water out of those huge bald cypress swamps. And once the water was drained, it was much easier for the loggers to get in there and cut down those trees. And then the logs could be floated out the canals and then rafted and eventually made their way down to the South Carolina coast, where those logs could be milled and marketed. And so here are some excerpts where the local folks, including ancestors of Lumbee people, told them, you can't do it, it can't be done. But the whole thrust of the article is the industrialists kind of showing them, oh yes, we can, and we will do it. And so the wetlands and the swamps were talked about during this time in very derogatory terms, turning it from a malarious ooze into something more productive. That was the theme of the day around the turn of the 20th century. Of course, our ancestors weren't, it's not that they were asleep at the wheel, they were suffering mightily from discrimination and segregation. I want to show, I have a couple of images of what the ditching and draining processes look like. There's a great paper that came out a few years ago that has some images from the back swamp drainage project in Robeson County. And then Jeff Curry, the river keeper, and I found these photos on the right in the North Carolina archives just last year, showing surveyors out in the swamps of Robeson County, making measurements in preparation to cut down all of those bald cypress trees. I thought it was interesting that in the top photo, The person holding the staff, the measuring stick, is a woman. So even in the early 20th century, we had women working out in the swamps on these projects. Our ancestors were fighting other fights at this time. So I pulled photos from both the Coharie community and the Lumbee community around the turn of the 20th century, and we were advocating for basic education for our children. And so very similar circumstances, trying to get funds to build schools in the segregated South. And so all of this was happening to our wetlands and to our swamps and to those magnificent bald cypress trees, while our ancestors were focusing on education, which was very important. And we owe so much of what we have today to the foresight of our ancestors. But it goes to show that all of this exploitation of the landscape was happening in the background. And so that was very, very unfortunate that we lost so much of our original swampland and those beautiful bald cypress trees during this period more than 100 years ago. But that's not why we're here tonight. I'm really excited to hear from Greg and Philip about the Great Coharie River project. That review of the history was really just to say our ancestors suffered mightily in many different ways, and have managed to survive and persevere and thrive. And the Great Coharie River Initiative is a beautiful example of the ways that Native people in North Carolina continue to survive and to express their connections to culturally important places. And I'm really just grateful for Greg and Philip's hospitality and for the hospitality of other members of the Coharie tribe who have taken us down the river, who have cooked for us, who have made space for us to do scientific work, who have helped us in so many ways. And so I've had the honor to come alongside the Coharie tribe to work on a few scientific objectives, helping to understand the health of the river, for example. Here are some photos of some of our adventures through the years, going all the way back to Hurricane Florence, when Greg and Philip took us around and we collected water samples in the midst of all those floodwaters in Sampson County, and then moving all the way forward to the present day with these amazing trips down the Great Coharie River. And so I'm really grateful for the two of you, and I'm grateful that you've made space for scientists and others to come in and partner with you on these projects. I think it's an amazing story that you all have to tell. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Greg so he can tell us more of that story. Thank you so much.
Hey, the first slide. Thank you for that information. I learned some things there about this. And thank you for admitting that you're Coharie here in front of all of the world, because we're so proud of you. Thank you very much for that. I got to start out by telling how the Great Coharie River Initiative, how it started. Basically, this river has been a teacher. This project has been a teacher. And it's something that I really can't take credit for. I think it came from a power greater than my own, but I've got to tell you the initial start and give credit where credit is due. We listened to our elders down here. They're very wise people. And the start of this project was a conversation that I heard my sister, who is now 90 years old, and a lady by the name of Sis Goodman, who is 90 years old. They were having conversation. I was the new tribal administrator for the Coharie tribe for the second time, back about 2011. Miss Sis says to me, giving me input as to my new job and what was I going to do. What you going to do about our river? And I gave that some thought, and I heard her say, our river. When she did, my sister chimed in on the conversation, and all of this passion came out of them. I couldn't get a word in edgeways as they spoke of their youth and how they had enjoyed the river and what the river meant to them. They had been aware, and they made me aware that we had forgotten about our river. I mean, that river was important to our tribe. We settled on it in the early 1700s. We raised our families on it. There was good medicine in it, and our ancestors knew it. But I think we had neglected our responsibility with the storms and the debris falling into the river. It was flooding. It was becoming a swamp. Invasive weeds and other things had taken over the river. And she says, it's not the place that it used to be. We had the conversation there, and I enjoyed their passion as they talked about the river. But for a few weeks there, I couldn't sleep, and I was thinking, well, what can I do about the river? I have no money, and river's a large place. How could I correct the problem? I knew a man that he had always loved the outdoors and the river, even more so, I think, than I did. Me and him had run those rivers as we were kids and teenagers and even to young adults. And that was Mr. Philip Bell, and Jesslyn referred to him as the Coharie River legend. And that is what he is. He walks these rivers. I've walked them all his life, I reckon, to see if they were okay. I just think he didn't have the resources to help nourish them back to health. But I went to Philip and I said, Philip, something bothered me. The elders have told me that our river is sick and it needs some help, and I just can't get it off my mind. And Philip got very serious with me, one of my best friends, and he says, have you seen the river lately? He said, it's become a swamp and nobody cares. He says, Greg, I've got 2 grandboys and I want them to have, this was the key words, the same quality of life that me and you had when we were young. He said, don't you remember how we used to fish in that river and swim in that river and run the bank? He said, those banks are gone. It's a swamp. The paths that we used to walk into the river, said they're all flooded now. I'm standing in water year round. Thought I saw his eyes watered up. He was getting emotional, and I don't know if I even believed myself. I said, well, we'll have to do something other about it. I guess we'll have to clean it out. I thought maybe we'd clean out a path to the old fishing hole, the Downell hole that was named after Philip's dad, when we used to go and catch big fish and a lot of fish. That was as far as I saw that we maybe could do. This picture here that you're seeing, the value of human resources. We had some young men that played our Native American drum. They were the Native American drum group at the time. Philip and I were getting on up in age, and we needed some strong men, and we called them together, talked with them about the river, and we decided to meet one Saturday morning and go down there and get in the river and see if we could clean it out. That's exactly what we did. These young men were passionate about the river. They were glad to do it, and they worked hard on that first day. Have you got anything to say about this first side? These were the young men in the community. And let me just say this about these young men. They were available to us at that time because many of them wasn't working. They were probably at the crossroads of their life in making a decision on what road they were going to travel. Some of them we sort of worried about. But through this Coharie River Initiative, we have seen these young men become more responsible. They seem to have a sense of belonging. They have families now, they have homes now, and they have sufficient jobs. Matter of fact, they're not readily available to help me to do things that I want to do, and I'm glad they're not. And I think that first experience in that river had a lot to do with that. Are you here, Philip?
Oh yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah. This first takeoff here of these young fellas is, I don't know, Greg was talking about the river, and he was talking about our friendship and how the river was something special to not just me, but I think to the whole community. I know for the Native American community, because that was one of our sources for subsistence, and just about everyone loved to eat fish. The men liked to hunt, and the ducks and squirrels and all the wildlife that was there. But over time, the river became, with the advent of beavers and the beaver population coming back in the 50s was a good thing. The state brought beavers in for farmers to have something to supplement their income in the wintertime when farm season was over. And it was great. And it worked well until we started getting a few hurricanes, and then PETA and fur trade dwindled. Then there were no native or natural predators for the beavers, and the beavers do what beavers do. They built dams. Now, we enjoyed beavers when they first came because they were really good. Like, again, they supplemented the income. They created these little pools for that you could go and catch fish in, and they were a lot of fun to play with. But over time, and no control or regulations, and then the trees falling in the river, it just became a mess. And from there, it just, I don't know, the storms came, waters got higher. With high waters and storms, you get ducks and other wildlife that come into the river. And so the ducks bring plant life on their feet. And so we had invasive weeds that began to grow in our streams and our rivers. And with the sparkweed, alligator weed, parrot feather, and spikeweed, these are fast growing. They love to spread. They love to take over. And there was, the river just became a mess. And I think about the river just like I do Greg and myself. Greg and I, there's only 4 days difference between our ages. So we grew up together, and we had a good time together, and we played and we took care of each other. Greg and I are 69 years old now, and both of us have gone through some trying times in our careers and in our life. And we've always been there for each other to help take care of one another. And we both had a friend. His name was Marson. He was a mutual friend. And Marson drowned one day when he and I were talking. And I was supposed to meet him in the afternoon, and I didn't. I had other things that I was doing. And anyway, Marson drowned. And until this day, I just always wonder, if there was something I could have done that afternoon instead of, what I wanted to do, would Marson still be with us today? Because we lost a true and a good friend, someone that was one of those cornerstones for us. In any event, that's the way I feel about the river now. The river was my friend because it was there when I was a young boy, and learning how to navigate the world. Daddy would always take us fishing. We were sharecroppers or share farmers. And so in the afternoons, we couldn't go to town, and on weekends, we couldn't go to the basketball courts. We couldn't go to the swimming pools in town. We couldn't even go to the drugstore to get a Coke and drink it in the drugstore. We had to drink it outside. Couldn't go to the movies, but we could always go to the river. So the river was our recreation department. It was where we had freedom. The river taught us so much. And now, when I retired from USDA, came home and tried to go into the river, I pretty much got ran out. The state owns the river now. It belongs to the DEQ, and they have restrictions on access to the river. And so I went in and I cleared a little place on our land and to hunt or to get access. And I was confronted by some of our neighbors, and they said, the folks at DEQ are looking for you because you made a mess down in the river with your fish hog. And I said, well, I haven't been on their land. And he said, well, they're going to come and lock you up. And I told him, I said, well, come on, lock me up. It'll be okay. But anyway, they let me know that we had no freedoms for our river anymore, and I didn't like that. So this started the Great Coharie River Initiative. This started something to try to bring an old friend back. Without some assistance, without going in and trying to make a difference so the water will flow, so trees can grow and bring back the canopy, our friend will be gone just like Marson. And we don't have a lot of time. At 69 and not getting any younger, we're going to have to work hard, and we are working hard trying to get to that point. And that comes to human resources. These young men, like Greg said, they came and they helped us clean out some of the river in the beginning, a couple of miles. And I'll let Greg share some of their stories because they like to talk to Mr. Greg. Mr. Greg was their father figure, and they shared some good stories with him.
Next slide. This is a picture of in the early days. The river was clogged up. It looks like a swamp. Those trees were big. We had handheld tools. Sometimes we'd work on one tree all day and never budget and tear up all the tools that we had. However, we were ambitious, and we had heard the river cry out for help. Somehow or another, the ancestors were speaking to us and telling us it's our responsibility to Mother Nature, that the river had taken care of us and we needed to take care of it. Okay, one thing that was in my mind is I could think about the impossibility of us cleaning out that river. I had looked back at our ancestors over the years, and they had very little, but they took what they had and they would start. And they had faith in the Creator that He would send what they needed. And I remember telling Philip, I said, if we'll get down in that river and do what we can, the Creator will send us everything we need to clean that river out. Next slide. Another picture of the river, and that was probably a place where there was a tree all the way across the river, but we did get it unobstructed. Next slide. I will just say this, and I'll turn this over to Philip. It became reality. What I told Philip is that if we'll get down in that river and start, then the Creator will send us what we needed. We had no money, like I said, to start with. We borrowed some tools, finally got about $5,000 through a grant, bought us a boat where we could, ferry the tools up and down the river and started cleaning it out. However, I'm going to go ahead and tell this, that that power greater than my own has sent over $2 million today for us to clean out the rivers of Sampson County. And as of today, I think it's over 130 miles that we have cleaned out. From my humble beginnings, I think that's quite a feat. Philip?
Yeah, this photo here shows where we are now with our debris removal operations, in that we are fortunate to get money from the state to do debris removals. And these gentlemen here, they do a great job in getting that done. Greg was talking about our humble beginnings and the young men. I'd like to tell one little story though about those humble beginnings in the wake up of the river. I mentioned it a while ago, and I passed over it. When those young men were down in the river one day, I think it was the second day that we worked. Again, like Greg said, we had just rudimentary tools to work with, barred chainsaws and barred kayaks and all. These fellows, they learned a new song that they wanted to play, or they wanted to learn to sing. Anyway, one of them got a beaver stick and he started beating in the water and chanting. And the others grabbed a stick with him, and they started chanting. And a few minutes, it just got good. I mean, the hair was sticking up on the back of my neck. I was thinking, man, this is good. I've never heard a song sang like this before, and I've been to powwows all my life, but that was just a true experience that I'll never forget. And a few weeks later, I was in a meeting over town, and we were talking about the Great Coharie River Initiative and hoping to get some assistance for some beaver mitigation. And a gentleman got up in the group and he said, I was down in the river the other day and I heard this chanting, and I couldn't figure out where it came from, but when I could just feel it when it came by me, and kept right on down the river. And I came back and I told Greg, I said, well, we broke the river up down, and so we're ready to go. And we have been moving ever since. And this debris removal operations that you see going on here is part of that movement, in that we're opening up, like Greg said, 130 miles of river so far. We'll open some more. And what we're looking at now, more than anything else, is a maintenance program on the lower section of the county. Up on our end, the rivers are still, they're not open, and they're really sick right here where we are. Next slide there, Brian. This is the tools that are being used now for debris removal. They do a lot more work in a shorter amount of time than we could with our borrowed chainsaws and tools. Next slide. As a result of the work and the efforts that are going on, we've got open rivers now. We've got a lot of sections that you see are clear and for kayaking. We're at the point now that where we're looking at where we began a kayaking service for the tourism part. And this gentleman here, he's with our water and soil conservation group. And if you look behind him there, that is some of the weed growth that is in a section of river that is not far from here. And this is what the river looked like when we first started back in 2015. That section now, there's only a narrow place. You can get through there, only your paddle, I mean, only your kayak can get through there now. The weeds there, that's spike weed and alligator weed that you see growing, is beginning to encroach into those areas. And that's what's beginning to give us some concern as we move down and work with the Coharie River Initiative. Next slide. And this is just this is on another section of river that we were doing an inspection on, and he wanted to take a break. Next slide. And we've entertained a lot of people. I think in 2019, if I remember right, 18 or 19, we entertained almost 800 people just showcasing our river. They wanted to see what it looked like. We wanted them to see it. We have an area clear where they can come in. It's only about an hour and a half ride, and we can show them what it has: a high ground and low ground. Ryan talked earlier about the different trees and the levels or areas. There are sections in our river that are high ground where the ball cypress and the oaks and all are pretty, and then there are sections that are just low areas and they're filling in now. So we're trying to keep those open so people can see the difference in the terrains as they go. Anything to add, Greg?
Just to say that picture brings to mind is that as we cleaned out the river and not really knowing what we were getting into, the traffic has increased as we have developed unobstructed waters. People come from all over North Carolina. They've come from California. They've come from Washington State, people that we've made friends and heard about the Great Coharie River. It seems to be a magical place. It's teaching me that it's a magical place, and our ancestors knew it was a magical place. This is where they stopped running from the diseases. Back as the Europeans came to America, intertribal warfare, colonial warfare. It was a safe place here by this magic river across called the Coharie. And we're reviving that sacredness today. It bears our name. So you're looking at a love affair between a river and a tribe of people. Next slide. Yeah, I would really like to speak about this. I remember this day, and it was one of the more beautiful days that we went down a river. Charlie Lowry, who is a performer that's very well known, a Lumbee performer that has a band. There's some of my nieces. There's Wakamasuan. There's Halawasaponi. and it's what the river has to offer. It's a living entity that brings people together, intertribal collaboration. I think every one of these girls probably take the experience that they had on the Coharie River back to their community and says there's magic in our natural resources, and probably aware that they need to take care of and see what the calling and what their responsibility is to open up their water sources. It gives them a sense of belonging. It identifies where they live, where they're healthy. The healthier that river is, the healthier all our community is. The wildlife, the aquatic stuff in the water. So yeah, this river initiative has spread throughout the state and created interest of everybody that's gone down the river. Each one of these girls can tell you a different story. Really quick, the basic thing that gave me so much pride and made me happy that we started the River Initiative. Now, my board of directors was looking at me like, what are you doing? I didn't know if I'd keep my job or not. I don't know why I continued to push on for this River Initiative, but it was like a calling, and it was something that I had to do. But a young man that went down there with us the first day, that was at the crossroads of his life, a destructive life or a progressive life. Even in the wintertime, after that first day, I would see him wrapped all up, and he was going down that river in December, maybe 30-some degrees out there. And I was thinking, boy, he's tough, or he discovered something up there. I don't know what he's doing. But he came to my office one day and he sat down and talked. We developed a relationship down in that river. And I hope that I'm setting a good example as his mentor. And I said, young man, I saw you down in that river on Sunday. It was 32 degrees. And what's so important in that river? What have you found down there that you'll go down on a cold day like today? The young man used to be shy and would hardly look at you in the eyes, but he sort of looked down at the ground and he shook his head and he looked up at me and smiled and he said, Mr. Greg, he said, I found myself. He said, I found myself. So then I knew that my calling was worthwhile. If you just saved one, if the river and what it delivered to just one person could help them stay on a straight path, save their lives, it was worth all the struggles and hard work that we were doing down in the river. Next slide. Another one enjoying the river. Everybody's going down the river has a story to tell. My granddaughter tells me she wants to go down in the river sometime, and I say, okay, what's this about? As we get where we can't hear the traffic and there's no human beings, nothing but Mother Nature and us. And I remember one time she told me this. She said, Papa, I've been having a hard time lately. And she began to cry. She says, but I can go down in that river. And she says, and I can take my burdens and I can place them on the currents, and that river drifts them away from me. Well, by that time I had gotten emotional. I realized that our ancestors knew that there was natural medicine in that river. And I think today our community will never be the same because we finally look back at that river like our ancestors did, as it's a living entity, and it's healing, and it has medicinal value, mentally, physically. Next slide.
Just a minute. Oh, go back to that one just a minute, Brian. This is Charlie Lowry here. This is the reason we put it in here. Charlie Lowry, Greg talked about a while ago, is a really great singer. She's known, if you go online and look at her and listen to her music, you'll know why, because she's really good. But Charlie needed a kidney. She was on the kidney transplant list, and she was scheduled to get a kidney. She had been down, the picture before this, she had been down to visit with us, and they were singing and having a good time. And she was on the schedule to receive a kidney, and they found one. And there was, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hurdles you had to jump before they could do the operation. Anyway, the morning before the operation, she was she was getting ready to go in, and they called her and they told her, they said that, you know, one of the hurdles that you have to crawl over, you didn't pass, so we can't do the transplant now. And Charlie called us and asked, she said, can I come down and visit you in the river? We were busy that morning. I'll never forget it. We said, no, I mean, you can come on down whenever you get ready. If you want to come, we'll be here. So Charlie came, and she had tears in her eyes. She looked just terrible. So Charlie always would sing for us in the river. She sounds so good. We got in the river, we went down. We had a good time, or a good trip, because she began to mellow out, and we'd always get her to sing when she would visit with us. So about 3/4 of the way down the river, I asked her, I said, Charlie, can you sing us a tune? And she did. She sang a song. And yeah, we got to the end, and when we got to the end, at least she looked like she was back to life. A little bit of happiness. You could see a little smile. You could still see that she was downhearted because she didn't get her kidney. Well, about a month later, she got a call and said that you need to come in. We found the kidney, and so we need to do the operation. So they did. They did the transplant. She got out 2 weeks later, and she called. She said, Philip, can I come back down to the river again? I said, sure, you can come whenever you get ready. And she came, she brought her whole family. So we carried the whole family on the river, and that was a joyous day. That's what the river has. I mean, it has something that once you feel it, it will never leave you. And so that's something that I'm trying to, or that we are trying to keep for our people. It's important, I think, to our folks to have our people, to have a source of something that you can hold on to, something that you can, that you know is there to protect you. Okay, you can go ahead. All right, Ron. Along with the tourism components and the work that we're doing, we have the military that are using, we have 2 access points on the lower part of the big Coharie that we are proud of. Is locations that we worked hard to purchase, and so they're ours. So we have a point now where we can put in, and another 0.7 miles downstream where we can take out, and nobody can run us off or keep us from being there. And that's what our young men like. They love to know that they have somewhere where they can go. And the military, they do exercises every now and then. So they contact us and want to know where access points were, and so we work with them. Next slide. Things are changing. I know I think everyone probably on the call, except those on the West Coast, have heard about hurricanes that come into North Carolina here of late. This is a cabin that is down on Black River. The last hurricane we had gave us about 54 inches in that cabin. This is on a high bluff that's never been flooded before, that anyone could call that lived in that area. And when Florence came through, she dumped enough water to do this kind of damage to it. You can go to the next slide. This one of the things I want to talk about here with the flooding and with the way the river is now. Back when we grew up, this little fish down on the left, it's called a pike, a red fin pickerel. And red fin pickerel was one of the staple fish in our creek. There was red fin pickerel, there was chain pickerel, the jack, the little mud cats. There's a name for them, I forget, escapes me right now. But they're little small catfish, but these were staples here. And now you can't find these. We haven't caught a red fin pickerel in the last probably 6 or 8 years. The jack are gone. They've been replaced by bowfin, by gar, alligator gar. They've been replaced by other species and stuff. I mentioned the plant life a while ago, but we've got nutria now that are boring holes and all. The things are changing in the river. And I mentioned earlier about how this change is not good. It's not healthy for the river. And with this change, Ryan has helped us to get a little to get more information about the health of our rivers. We were concerned that what's wrong with the fish species, what's happening with the changes of the river. Is it safe for people to come and fish? Is it safe for people to access the river? So he's directed us to some folks at NC State who have been doing some water sampling, and the samples are will help us to make some determinations and hopefully give some direction on if something needs to be done. So next slide. And this is an example of the amount of fish that used to come out of our creeks. And this was just a normal day when we could go in and have a good time. And Greg and I have seen many times like this, and hopefully we'll see some more before our days are over. You have anything to add, Greg?
I'll tell them that that's your dad, Mr. Daniel Bell, and Philip comes from an outdoors family, and they used to include me. They actually introduced me to the passion of the river and what the river has to offer. So yeah, we are concerned about the fish life and what has happened to them. So thank you, Fran, for the water monitors and seeing what's in our water. Is it safe for swimming? Is it safe for eating? And I hope to see today that we can bring strings out of like that, day after day. Everybody in the county can enjoy them. So that's it. Next slide, Ryan, if there's one. Okay, so that is the end of the slides, but I think that overall, it's been a magical ride. It's been tough cleaning out the rivers, but Creator has sent us what we've needed. I'm really honored to work for such a community, such hospitable people, and our people are our most valuable resource. I've only got 4 full-time staff here, and we do a lot of things, but I don't know, probably 50 volunteers that come from all around to help us to carry out the activities. From my seat as travel administrator, I get to see a lot of lives transformed, and that river's had a lot to do with it. That river's helped us bond with our local government and become visible as the people throughout the state. And I think we're hoping that future generations will not forget about their responsibility and just how important that river has been in the past, is today, and on into the future. Mr. Bell.
Yes, sir. You opened up something that I hadn't thought about. Jesslyn Kasaya, who introduced us. I have to take my hat off to her and Ryan both, but Jesslyn worked with us earlier or a few years ago before she moved on to better things. Help us with grant proposals. She's a good grant writer. And one in particular that she worked on for a long time helped us get a few dollars to get started in the river, and then now it's helped increase our visibility as we move forward with this journey. And we're grateful for people like Jesslyn, for people like Ryan, who are bringing something to the table here that can help with our community to bring folks together. And just my hat's off to y'all.
Well, we've had some questions start to come in through the chat. It'd be a good time to start getting to these. First off, there are some questions about what the government, at either the local or the state level, is doing to support this initiative, if anything.
We've seen the transformation in the relationship of our tribe and local county government. So I guess the answer to that is in manpower. Mr. Henry Faison works over with soil and water conservation. And he has worked along with us so well and bonded with the tribe in helping us prepare proposals and the mapping and the various things that we need to be successful in bidding on grants. We had a big gathering just last week, and it was a community roundtable. A lot of people came to, and what we wanted was input as to the future efforts and where do we go now. And we're involved with North Carolina State University and project that's going to create a flood print for the future. And you know, the county commissioners, they came out and they were looking at the information and they were knowledgeable. We were visible that we were doing. And I did hear the chairman of the county commissioners say that we want to be a part of what you're doing. We see what you're doing. It's good what you're doing. And so we look for more involvement by the local county government in the future. We have not received any financial support from them. We've, through philanthropy, the federal government, well, the states has actually pitched in the money for debris removal, but it's helped us develop a stronger relationship with local government. If that answers your question.
Seems like there's room for improvement from the government, which is not surprising, not any different than anything that we know.
Yeah, well, we're waiting patiently.
Yeah, we have some pretty good partners with different groups in the government. DEQ, as resistant as they are for us access to the properties, and well, they have hunting leases that they lend out, and so I understand those issues. But we work together in for access points. They don't stop us from getting into the river and getting out, so that's a good thing. And then USDA Wildlife Services, they've worked with us to help in some beaver mediation areas where we were trying to get some things cleaned out, especially with debris removal. So the government, some of the government agencies have been really good for us in moving on down the road here.
It's great to hear. Now, for folks here in the Zoom, you know, what can they do to help push this along, to get the word out, or on the grounds, you know, pulling weeds? What needs to be done?
On a spiritual level and on a responsibility level, you know, I think that what I've seen here is our responsibility is being good stewards of our environment. So whether they do it here or not, I think we need to tune our ear to hear what Mother Nature has to say. So now it's a reality in some kind of way that I hear the river speak, and I finally heard it. Probably Philip stimulated that says I needed help. When I ride down it, I hear it say, you know, finally, thank you, which leads me to this story. We got a 600-year-old canoe here that we found in the river that Ryan mentioned earlier. So in my creative mind, or maybe not so creative, but it was buried in the mud, I guess, in the bed of the river for a long, long time. It's 600 years old. But as we started cleaning this river out, And, you know, it stood up and showed itself. And it's almost like it says, well, thank you for this revival of your responsibility, for this cultural revival. You know, I want to be at the celebration now that you're doing what you're supposed to do. So I think that all over the state that we need to put hands on and meet our responsibility in doing. You can come and see us, yeah. You can go to coharietribe.org and book you a tour and go with a Coharie tourist guide. You can, the old Indian school, that is the office here, we'll show you through that, the canoe and our museum. So come and see us, come and see us. It's really hard for us to, it's erratic, the times that we work in the river. So basically what we're doing now is we're trying to take the tours down the river. You know, we'll check it out before the day of, and more than likely another tree has failed. Those trees have been standing in water so long that the root system is, it's not firm. At least a little bit of wind, another river's down. So it's going to be a continuous process, but they can come and see us and we can talk about it.
We might want to consider calling them a working tour. That way there, if you come across anything in the river, you know, get out of the boat or wherever and clean it up and then continue with the tour.
Well, you know, they do that. I found that a lot of the students coming from Duke University, they'll call us up and they'll want to work and they'll come down and do a work day. And I think Philip can tell you more about that. Just last week, a group came down and they had a work day. So what did you accomplish, Philip?
Quite a bit. We cleaned out, I think we had about 6 bags of trash that we picked up down the river and around some of the access points. So that was a great help. And the water was a little bit high, so we couldn't cut any trees. So we told them to come back later on and we'll. But what people can do, they can, you know, you mentioned what can folks do. Now that we are getting some visibility, that's great. Just increase that. We have a powwow the second week in September. That's a grand event. It's some of the best dancing and singing from the tribes come together. So the best collared sandwiches or collard wraps that you've ever had coming out from some of the vendors. So yeah, there's one thing too, you know, what people can do or what there's interest, who have interest, like Ryan. You take folks like Ryan Emanuel, who has the education and the understanding of natural resources, and he shares those with us. He'll tell me he'll tell me sometimes things that I'm thinking, you know, you're just getting on me about this, and I know exactly where he's coming from because he knows more about than I do, and I learned from that. And if we can teach our young folks those details of you know, how to understand nature and how to learn more about the ecology and the rivers, that'll be a great thing. So any help in that regard is always welcome.
If I could jump in real quick, Philip, and add that I think that this conversation and event tonight really highlights how valuable it is to elevate indigenous knowledges to their proper level in the way that we think about the world around us. I'm a scientist, and you know I own that. But you all have shared with the folks who are here tonight the importance of the Coharie way of thinking about the river as a relative. And too often, those of us who are based at universities or in education, academia, you know, we don't acknowledge the importance of the respect for rivers and other places that we have these connections to. And you all have demonstrated that in a really powerful way. So I would ask everybody who's in attendance tonight to take away from this the the understanding that it's not just about respect for respect's sake for the river. It's respect because you all have an intimate understanding of what that river needs to be healthy. And, you know, to take away from this night, that understanding, I think would be really important. And so people who come away from this event tonight ought to know that Coharie knowledge and indigenous knowledge more generally is a valid way of looking at the world around us. And it's not only valid, in many cases, it is the way of thinking that we need in order to solve these really complicated problems around sustainability and climate change and pollution. We need to treat our rivers like relatives and give them the respect that they deserve and the space that they need and all the other things that they need. I think that y'all are teaching us that in a really powerful way. And I know that I appreciate it. And I hope that everybody who's here with us tonight can appreciate that and take that out into the world and think about what it means in the places where they live and where they come from.
Thank you very much for saying that. It was beautifully said, Ryan. That's our desire.
That is.
Well, Philip, there is a question. I think it's directed toward you and the story that you shared earlier about the inspiring music that you heard out on the land. Not sure if there is a recording of that tune that you heard, but if you are aware of a recording, we would love to share that out. Dr. Emanuel has shared a link to Charlie Lowry's Spotify, so I'll be sure to share that in the chat for folks, as well as in a follow-up email coming to your inboxes tomorrow.
The story, I mean, the music that you heard in the beginning, that was the group that was singing in the river that day. It was came from Smoky River, and people in the river on YouTube. You can go to that link up, people in the river, and hear that music. A particular song was one that one of the drummers had written. It was just something that they were starting and they were putting together. I can't recall the name of the song, but I know it when I hear it. If you come to the powwow, I guarantee you'll hear it.
Well, you can go on YouTube also and look up Smoky River, and you can, yeah, there's extensive videos and recordings on Smoky River. They're a southern drum as opposed to the northern style of singing. But yeah, if you just Google up Smoky River YouTube, you'll know what we're talking about.
Wonderful. I look forward to checking these out. We're coming close to time. I just want to invite folks at home to add any more questions they have to either the chat or the Q&A. We'll be monitoring that. I guess before we get too close to 7:30, I just want to see if there's any last minute comments any of you want to add while we wait for any more questions to come in.
David, I'd love to ask a question.
Feel free, be my guest.
And thanks y'all so much for being here with us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I know for me, it's always really beautiful to listen to and also very emotional. It really touches a deep place. So thank you for your leadership. And I'm just wondering if you, when you think about the future, if you can share with us some of the hope you have for the future, what you'd like to see. I know I've heard each of you talk about working with the next generation and how can we inspire future leaders to get involved. And I'm thinking even about, are there professional development opportunities of, we'd love to train up people with these sorts of skills or to come in and join the team in this sort of way. Because I know there's so many people who want to be involved and want to find their way to support. Any thoughts around that? Hope for the future? Things you'd like to see?
Yeah, I was raised through segregation, and probably many of you listening might not even know what that is. But it was racial strife and lack of opportunity and lack of educational attainment. But we're hoping to teach through this river. We're hoping to develop passions for furthering people's education. Maybe they can become a scientist like Ryan or an engineer. And so we're looking, education is the way out for us of, I don't know, I think sometimes a low self-image, this river has helped us learn how to think outside of the box. And I think that before then, it's like I told you, I thought maybe we could clean out 100 yards of river. I didn't have any idea that we would end up cleaning out over 100 miles of river. So that river has taught me that, Greg, your people can accomplish just as much as anybody else. You have the abilities. Let's take advantage of the opportunities. Let's get more education. Let's apply ourselves, and let's dream big. So that river has helped me to dream big. Through that river, just like that young man that told me he had found himself, I hope that in future generations here in Coharie land that they'll learn to dream big, that it will inspire them to further their education, and now that there's more opportunities. So progress into the future over the generations to make this world a better place. And we're hoping, and this river has really put documentation of that. Let's leave this world in a better place for future generations than it was for us. So we hope to do that. And then we hope to instill it in future generations, and it will continue.
I think the work you're doing right now is doing just that. So I hope that your wishes can be fulfilled. On that note, you've mentioned the success that you've had cleaning over 100 miles. I hate to ask, but how much more is left? Do you have an estimate on that?
We've cleaned almost all that is not in swamps, that has been overtaken by the weeds and the grass and the beavers and all. Yeah, right now we're at a point of where a maintenance program is needed, and that's what we're hoping to see in the future is a maintenance concept that will keep the river open for people to paddle on and people to enjoy, for people to come and see for themselves. Yeah, it's great for the community. It's great for the broader community in that a lot of there's more kayaks going up and down the road now than there's ever been. So that's good to see. I'm really encouraged when I'm down on the river fishing or when we're down paddling to see other folks down there, and knowing that they're local people too. That's even more encouraging. So, but yeah, we invite anyone to come, but to see the locals is it's good.
And then with that maintenance plan, do you think reintroduction of the pickerel would also be included?
Well, I don't know. Brian could probably answer that more than I do. I think the water, the water's changed, whether it's the pH or the acidity or something has changed. And it could be the introduction of flathead catfish that's come up from the Cape Fear River that's coming into our area now. The bowfin that have more area to feed in. Yeah, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. That's what bothers me. You go downstream and you can catch some species of fish that we used to catch here, but you can't catch here anymore. So I haven't figured that out yet, but we're working on it.
And I'm not a fisheries person. I think that's an excellent question. You know, one thing that we know about the Coharie River is that it's free flowing all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So I think there are some opportunities and some challenges that come along with a completely free flowing river, but it is it's not completely unique in that respect, but it is increasingly rare to have a free flowing river that far inland.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, and this has been such an impactful and powerful story to hear. And I want to thank all three of you for coming together to share this from all of your perspectives. And you shared the wisdom that the health of the river parallels the health and impacts the health of all beings. And I hope that we can all hold that to our hearts this evening and take that with us, and the power, Greg, of you listening to that calling and look at what you all have accomplished, both for the river and for the community. So powerful. So again, thank you all. It's a powerful story, and I'm grateful for everyone who's joined us tonight to have heard it, and grateful to know you all, and look forward to hearing of other places that have also heard this story and see it as an inspiration to do the same thing on their rivers and bring that health into their communities. Jesslyn, would you like to say any closing words?
I just want to say thank you all so much. As I said at the beginning, I'm just honored to know you, to support this work over the years, to be alongside truly some of my heroes in community for years. And I think that respect comes so easily, and it also deepens every single day, every time I hear the story again, to have heard this story for so many years, and it still carves deeper and deeper grooves every time. It's just really beautiful. So it's profound work. I think it's inspiring a whole generation. It's been a model statewide, has influenced a lot of work that's happening elsewhere in our Native communities and beyond. And so as deep as this has already been going, I think it's still very much the beginning in some ways, in terms of the real impact that remains to be seen, even though there's been so much impact already. So I just can't thank y'all enough for your leadership, and also sharing this time with us, and really look forward to continuing the conversation and checking back in to see what the progress is. I'll also say, for folks that have been on the call and want more information, there are other videos and features about the river, about this work, interviews that have happened over the years. And so I encourage you to keep up, whether it's on YouTube, on Facebook, Mr. Greg through the tribe posting on social media pretty regularly, and Dr. Ryan Emanuel's work right here locally down the road. And also keep up with the American Indian Center, because we will always continue to feature these voices of community leaders, and we appreciate all y'all, and also the partnership with the Botanical Garden to make room for these voices to also reach into your audiences. So appreciate being here with y'all.
Thank you, Justin. Well, thank you all, and good night to all of our guests. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Come see us.
Thank you.